When this life is o'er, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life have grown, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars have flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Well, come on in. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. One more time. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
Good morning and welcome to worship. As we continue our journey through this Easter season, please join me in our call to worship. Today, we remember that the risen Christ travels with us on all of the difficult roads of our lives. When we are confused or lost or afraid, we have a divine companion by our side. Even if we don't recognize that Christ is with us, he is always by our side. In this time of worship, may our eyes be opened to see the resurrected Christ who sits with us and calms our minds and hearts. Because of Easter, being alone is an impossibility. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Let us worship our God of the new day. in prayer. O holy God, there is too much fear and anxiety in our world today. There is too much uncertainty and heartache. Walk with us, O God, and restore in us a confidence in your ability to deliver us from anxiety to peace, from illness to health, and from death to life. Come to us in this time of separation and remind us that we are all one. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
And this morning I invite you to join me in our Easter affirmation of faith as we continue our walk through this Easter season. We believe that on the road to Emmaus, the disciples met the risen Christ. We believe that at first they did not recognize him as he walked by their side. We believe that we too often fail to recognize the breath of God when it is near. We believe that God will open our eyes and we will see and believe that Christ is risen in our hearts and is with us through the community of faith that is his church. This we believe. Amen.
Listen for the word of God found in the first book of Peter, chapter 1, verses 17 to 23. If you invoke as Father the one who judges all people impartially according to their deeds, live in reverent fear during the time of your exile. You know that you were ransomed from the futile ways inherited from your ancestors, not with perishable things like silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without defect or blemish. He was destined before the foundation of the world, but was revealed at the end of the ages for your sake. Through him you have come to trust in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are set on God. Now that you have purified your souls by your obedience to the truth, so that you have genuine mutual love, love one another deeply from the heart. You have been born anew, not of perishable, but of imperishable seed, through the living and enduring Word of God.
I'm on my way to heaven, and I'm traveling night and day. I fear on my journey, and I stumble on the way. But when I reach that city, it will be a joyful day. I'm gonna walk right in and make myself at home.
Oh yes, I'm I'm going.
Yes, I'm going, and my Savior's going with me.
On to glory.
On to glory, where my loved ones wait for me.
When I get there.
When I get there, all my troubles will be over. I'm going to walk right in and make myself at home. The road is rough and rocky, but I'm going anyhow. I'm determined to reach heaven, and I'm on my journey now. And when I reach that city at the pearly gates, I'm going to walk right in and make myself at home.
Oh, yes, I'm going.
Yes, I'm going, and my Savior's going with me.
On to glory.
On to glory, where my loved ones wait for me.
When I get there.
When I get there, all my troubles will be over. I'm going to walk right in and make myself at home. Oh, Satan tries to stop me, but I'm going just the same. Where there'll be a joyful heaven, love and peace will always reign. There'll be no tears or sorrow in the land from which I came. I'm going to walk right in and make myself at home.
Oh, yes, I'm going.
Yes, I'm going, and my Savior's going with me.
On to glory.
On to glory, where my loved ones wait for me.
When I get there.
When I get there, all my troubles will be over. I'm going to walk right in and make myself at home.
Oh, yes, I'm going.
Yes, I'm going, and my Savior's going with me.
On to glory.
On to glory, where my loved ones wait for me.
When I get there.
When I get there, all my troubles will be over. I'm going to walk right in and make myself at home. I'm going to walk right in and make myself at home. Myself at home.
Well, good morning to all of you out there, and particularly the children. I want to spend a few minutes with you this morning. Hope you're doing well. I know this is a difficult time, being at home still all the time, and I know for those of you who are in school, I've been hearing from your parents that you're still doing school, of course, and it's a challenge without being able to go to school every day. You're doing school at home with teachers online, with the help of your parents, with the help of a schedule that's been put out, I know for some of you each day, to stay on track with all that. Do the best you can to stay with that schedule because it's important. I want to tell you this morning that school is important, education is important. One of you asked me some time back about what does it take to be a pastor? How do you become a pastor? And along with feeling a call from God in your heart, it involves a lot of school. It involves a lot of education. I went all the way through elementary school. Then I went all the way through middle school. Then I went all the way through high school. Then I went all the way through college. And then I went all the way through a special school called seminary, which trains people to be pastors in the church. It's a 4-year master's program. And after I was done, I got this, my diploma from seminary. And it's a Master of Divinity degree. And when I got this, I thought, boy, that's really small. Because it took me forever to find a frame to fit this. And I thought, why couldn't they just spring for a full sheet of paper? But I also felt like this is outstanding because it allowed me to write a really long paper called an ordination paper and take an exam called an ordination exam in the church. And when I did that, I received this, which is my certificate of ordination. This means that I'm a pastor. And when I got this, I felt great, not only because it was a bigger piece of paper and I could find a frame that was easier to put on it, but it allowed me to be a pastor in a church and to serve churches in the United Church of Christ. And I have felt great doing that ever since. Really found the right thing for me. And I hope you find the right thing for you as time goes on. The other one that I wanted to show you this morning, these all hang in my office, but this one is in many ways more important to me than the other two I just showed you. And this is my graduation certificate from kindergarten. This hangs in my office. And I love this. It's really, really important to me. It says, this certifies that Dominic Taranowski, yeah, that's me right there, a pupil in the kindergarten class at St. Augustine's. I was a kindergarten at a church my family was Catholic at the time, has satisfactorily completed the program of kindergarten instruction and is therefore awarded this certificate of merit. And it was given at Lincoln City, Oregon, which is where we lived at the time. And it was on May 25th, 1972. So if you do the math, that's a little less than a bajillion years ago. And it's signed by Sister Mary Cecilia. And more about her in a minute. So this is really important to me. A lot happened to me in kindergarten that I learned a lot there in kindergarten. It really started when I was 4 years old. And I learned when I was 4 years old that when you turn 5, you go to kindergarten. And I don't know how you felt when you heard that, but I felt like, why would I do that? Why would I go to kindergarten? Because there's other people there. And I don't want anything to do with other people. I'm real happy where I am. At home, I got mommy, I got daddy, I got my 2 brothers and my sister. At the time we had 3 dogs. It was great. No thank you. No thank you. That's the polite thing to say, right? No thank you, I'm good. I'm good. We covered this, no thank you. Turned out, I didn't have a choice. I had to go. So off I go to St. Augustine's. And at St. Augustine's, this Sister Mary Cecilia, she ran the program. And she was a nun. And I had heard about nuns. And nuns are like women who are leaders in the Catholic Church. They often run schools, or did run schools at the time. And they can be very strict. And so I was really worried about this. And my first day of kindergarten, I go in, and I cannot tell you how scared I was on that first day of kindergarten. And there she is, up at the front of the class, Sister Mary Cecilia, and she's wearing the whole habit for a nun. It's black and it's intimidating, and she's standing up there, and she turned out to be the nicest person you can imagine. She was one of my favorite people. She loved kids. She loved getting to know all of us. It was very casual. It was a lot of fun. Except every day, Sister Cecilia took a break. And she would leave, and this other teacher would come in. And I don't remember her name, but I remember her as Sister Mary Strict Lady, because she was not Sister Cecilia at all. She was like the opposite of Sister Cecilia. She would come in, and she would say, all right, you're going to sit down, you're going to be quiet, and you're going to learn math. You're going to learn math right now, and you're pretty much going to like it. So what could I do? I just started crying. I burst into tears. And this happened every day when Sister Cecilia left. In fact, every time this poor woman came in to teach math, I would burst into tears every time she entered the room. So eventually, what happened was Sister Cecilia would say, come with me. And so I would go with her on her break. She would take me with her outside, and I would calm down, and we would walk around this little garden, and she would show me the statues and tell me who these people were. There was this little house. I think they lived in the house, and she would go upstairs and take the rest of her break, and I would sit on the bottom step. I was just happy to not be in there with Sister Mary Strict Lady doing math. So I was thrilled with this. And then she would take me back in there, the other teacher would leave, and it would be great. Except there were days when I would come in to school, it's kindergarten, and Sister Cecilia wouldn't be there at all. Because she was, I don't know what, somewhere else or sick or something. And it was just Sister Strict Lady the whole day. And I can't tell you how difficult those days were. They were just awful days. I thought I might die. I thought I might die right there. But I made it through. Somehow I made it through. They were tough days. I tried and find some good part of those days, and I finally would make it through. And then Sister Cecilia would come back, and it would be fine. So this certificate means a lot to me, because a lot happened. It was an emotionally exhausting time in kindergarten. But I learned a lot, and I learned a few things. One is, for you, you're not always going to like all of the subjects you study in school. And that's okay. That's okay. I didn't like math. I still don't like math. But I learned enough to get by. And sometimes that's all you can do. It's okay that you don't like every subject, because finding out what you don't like can really help you know more about yourself. The other thing I learned is that sometimes you're going to have teachers that you really love, that are awesome and great, and other times you're going to have teachers you really don't like. You just don't like. And when it comes to people you don't like, it could be teachers, it could be other students, not liking them is not going to make them go away. Not liking them is not going to somehow magically turn them into people you like. They're going to be there. They're going to do their thing. And you have to find a way to work with them. Find a way to get through. Sometimes you just have to shovel your way through to get to the next teacher or some other setting, right? It can be difficult. And it's the same thing with when I got into seminary. It doesn't change, by the way, unfortunately. Because in seminary, there were professors that I really liked and other professors I didn't like at all. So you have to find a way to work with people who are difficult, people you don't necessarily care to be around. But in the end, I learned that this is all a big adventure. School life is a big adventure where sometimes things go great with people who are great, and sometimes things are really difficult with people who are really difficult. And when things go great, you give thanks to God, and when things are difficult, you pray to God, and you know what? God's going to scoot up right next to you in those times. Jesus is going to come right up next to you and walk with you and going to see you through those difficult times. It will happen. It will happen. God's going to be right there with you during those tough times. And in the end, you're going to be a better person for having gone through all of that. The good times, the difficult times, you become a better person. So hang in there with the schoolwork that you're doing right now. I know it's weird without going to school and still doing school at home, but know that you have support around you. You have God with you, you have your parents with you, you have your friends. Everybody's there to help you be a success at this. So hang in there, stick with the schedule as best you can, and we'll get through this. So thanks for spending this time with me, and we'll catch up next week. I invite you to hear these words from the Gospel according to Luke. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him. Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things, then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and the prophets, he interpreted to them all the things about himself in the Scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the Scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Here ends our scripture lessons for this morning. May God add a blessing to the reading and to the hearing of these holy words. And will you pray with me? Compassionate Creator, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our minds and our hearts bring us into deeper relationship with you, you who are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, as we move through this Easter season, it's good to remember that Easter is not just one day. Easter is a season within the church year, and in fact, it's more than that. Easter is a way of life. It's a way of life for each and every Christian. And we're reminded of that by texts like this one from Luke, which is one of my favorite stories, that shows the risen Christ appearing at a time other than Easter morning. Jesus, you'll remember, often talked about his impending death. The disciples didn't like it when he did, but he did it anyway. He said that he would die and he would rise again. But the disciples didn't really believe him. They certainly didn't like the dying part of that message, and they really didn't believe the rising again part. It sounded like a false prediction. It sounded crazy. It sounded misleading. So when Jesus did die, people remembered. They remembered him telling them about all of this beforehand. And a rumor started to spread about the second half of Jesus' prediction. The rumor was that he had risen from the dead. But at that point, it was only a rumor. Too good to be true. Fake news, maybe. Our story from this today, from Luke's Gospel, takes place on the evening of Jesus' resurrection. Two of Jesus' followers, are heading to a village called Emmaus, which is about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they're probably glad to be getting out of town. They're glad to be getting out of town because Jerusalem was no longer safe for them. It was a threatening place right then. The Roman authorities and the religious leaders were on the lookout for Jesus' followers. They were prepared to quash any possible rebellion because they too, the leaders, they too had heard these stories about Jesus being alive again, and they had no explanation for how Jesus' body had disappeared from this sealed tomb guarded by soldiers. So they took it upon themselves to spread the fake news that his body had been stolen by his disciples. So strange stories, strange rumors are floating around all over the place. But these two followers on the road to Emmaus were focused on this rumor that Jesus' resurrection had taken place. They didn't know at the time, but it was wondrously true. This rumor said that an angel had appeared to Jesus, or at Jesus' tomb, and told the women who were there that Jesus was alive again. Now, the disciples didn't know which of these two rumors to believe. The one spread by the Romans and the religious authorities that the body was stolen, or this more fantastic rumor which originated with the women. Either way, they were getting out. They were getting out. Jerusalem wasn't a safe place anymore. They were grieving. They were in shock. They were confused by Jesus' death and these strange rumors about his resurrection. Some of you may know what that's like. Some of you may know what it's like to suffer a loss and be so overwhelmed by so many questions and emotions. How do you clear your head? How do you think straight? Well, these two disciples were working on that as they walked these 7 miles to Emmaus. And our Bible passage reads, while they were talking and discussing, working on this, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. You know, as we make our way through these unprecedented days of the coronavirus pandemic, these have to be some of the most assuring words in all of Scripture. Jesus himself came near and went with them. Jesus himself came near and went with them. Here's something you may not know. People in situations of extreme stress, people like mountain climbers or explorers or even survivors from the World Trade Center bombings, they have reported experiencing what is today being called the third man phenomenon. I don't know if you've heard about this. If you haven't, look it up. It's an amazing phenomenon. It's the sense that in your time of greatest danger and distress, an unseen presence or voice or even an actual person comes alongside you and guides you to safety or motivates you to keep going when you're ready to give up. It's passed off by the scientific community as the effect of adrenaline in the brain, but we've got another explanation for that. Sometimes that third man is real. In their grief and in their fear, Jesus himself came near and went with them. So you might say, well, why were their eyes kept from recognizing him? Why didn't Jesus just reveal himself as the risen Messiah and take away all their pain? Here's the answer, and it's important. It's because the greatest blessing that God can give us is not an easy life. The greatest blessing God can give us is the knowledge that God is with us in all of our challenges and struggles. We see this theme over and over again throughout the Bible, and not just in the Bible, but in everyday life. Particularly now, during this pandemic. God never promises us protection from hardship. The Bible never talks about an easy life. So let me say it again. The greatest blessing God can give us is not an easy life. The greatest blessing God can give us is the knowledge that God is with us. God is with us in all of our challenges and struggles. God, in other words, walks with us and works with us to help us find what we need. That's what Jesus is doing here in this story. You know, a lot of people justify their disbelief in God by citing the miracles in the Bible. That's impossible, right? That's unrealistic. That's unscientific, they say. But you know what? When you think about it, it's amazing how often God could have used a miracle to get God's point across, but God didn't. God didn't. Instead, God chose to walk with and work through average people and average circumstances. God, through Jesus, very often chooses restraint over power. Restraint over power. Jesus chooses not to miraculously heal the hurting hearts of these disciples, and instead comes near and walks with them for a while. Think of it this way. If God answered all of our prayers the way we would like, we would never need to grow. We'd never have to grow. We would never have to exercise any kind of faith. We would never need to quiet the noise within us and listen for God's voice. We would just keep looking for those blessings that God keeps doling out, right? Keep those blessings. Keep those blessings coming, God. We would look for those blessings, but we would never look for God. So maybe there's a place for gratitude for God's restraint. As difficult and as frustrating as that can be sometimes, particularly right now. Because we would rather that God would just fix everything. But God doesn't, at least not the way we would like. Instead, God meets us where we are, in our heartache and in our pain. And God listens. God listens to us. Remember, Jesus listens to these disciples. He asks, "What are you discussing?" And when he asks that question, they unload on him about how can you possibly not know what's going on, right? Jesus was killed. We thought he was the prophet to lead us into the future, and now he's dead. How can you miss that? How can you not get what's going on? God invites our catharsis. And then God, like Jesus in this story, invites us into a dialogue. And it's a dialogue that leads to revelation. It's a dialogue that leads to resurrection. Here's the bottom line. We are all on the road to Emmaus right now. We're all stressed. We're all unsure. We're all grieving in some way. We're all trying to get away somehow and figure this out. You know, nobody knows for sure where Emmaus was. This town doesn't exist anymore. But really, Emmaus is not a physical place. Emmaus is a place of the heart. So where is your Emmaus? Where is the place in your life where you are grieving, where you're feeling helpless, where you are feeling afraid? Where's the place in your life where Jesus then comes near and walks with you? Where's the place in your life where your eyes are then opened and you behold the risen Christ within you and around you? Because Emmaus is real. It's within you. And you can find a divine companion there who knows you and helps you find a new beginning. I want to leave you with an old Celtic prayer that I came across that I think fits really well with this story from Luke. And I hope it reminds you that Jesus knows your heart. Jesus knows your disappointments and your heartaches. He knows all of us because he's one of us. That's why on the road to Emmaus, he appeared as an average traveler. And it's the key to why, in the end, the disciples experienced such overwhelming joy and peace in his presence. The holy became ordinary, and the ordinary became holy. So the prayer reads like this. May the Christ who walks on wounded feet walk with you on the road. May the Christ who serves with wounded hands stretch out your hands to serve. May the Christ who loves with a wounded heart open your heart to love. May you see the face of Christ in everyone you meet, and may everyone you meet see the face of Christ in you. Amen. And let us be in a spirit of prayer. O God of our Easter season, Christ of our journey on the road to Emmaus, come near and be with us for a while. Walk with us, for you know our hearts. You know our worries and our fears. Walk with us and reveal to us the resurrection power that is in our lives and in this world. O God, be with those who are right in the middle of this pandemic, those who are sick and dying, those who are grieving those lost, those who are providing medical care, those who are working in essential services. There is so much that they are dealing with right now. And we would ask that you lift the burden from them and restore a sense of peace and wholeness and assurance and joy in them and in all of us. Bless our church this morning, O God, as we, though separated, strive to live out the good news of the resurrection in this Good Friday world. In the name of the risen Christ, who meets us on the road, we pray. Amen. Now I invite you to go forth in the peace and the love of God. Go forth into this Easter season as resurrected people. Go forth to remember those disciples on the road to Emmaus. Go forth into your time of fear and anxiety, knowing that Christ walks with you to give you assurance and peace and wholeness in your living. Go forth in confidence. Go forth in the peace of Christ.